I am now going to show you on how are we going to apply styles in JavaScript. There are actually two ways on how are we going to do this one. First is we have the inline style in which we are going to use the property style for the element. And the other one is apply predefined CSS classes. Okay, so if just in case you have your separate CSS file, so you could just create a reference for those by using the class name. But anyway, I'm going to have this one later on. I'm going to show you first on how are we going to style the elements that we have created using now the inline style. Okay, for example, if ever that I'm going to change the color of a certain element. Okay, so we have here the property style dot then color. Okay, is equal to whatever color that you want. Then, by the way, so what are those different properties? Okay, so if ever that you are going to go to, okay, I have here a sample for my style. Okay, so all of these, for example, text align, color, background color, padding, margin bottom, and so on. Okay, so all of these have the corresponding properties or styles into our JavaScript. But the only thing that you are going to take note is that we are going to use the camel case uh, properties. Okay, so instead that we are going to use the dash. Okay, so we have here, for example, background dash color. Okay, so we are going to use the camel case convention in which instead that we're going to have the dash, we are going to have background, then the next word will have its capital letter. Okay? Example here, JS uses camel case instead of CSS dash case. Okay? So if ever we're going to have margin bottom, so what will happen is we are going to remove the dash, then we are going to capitalize the B. Okay, so all of these and others are actually applicable or have their corresponding properties here in our JavaScript. So in our example, later on, I'm going to have this. I'm going to show you how are we going to apply this CSS into our by using JavaScript. But as of now, let us say, okay, I'm going to remove the header. Save. Okay, so we have here now our guest book, but as you can see, we don't have the header div contains an empty, or it is actually empty. It contains nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an h1 for welcome to my world for the heading. Okay, so as the page is going to load, is we are going to draw our header. Okay, so how are we going to uh, how are we going to detect or how are we going to know that the page has been loaded? Actually, we could put it here, okay? Because in our index.html, so we have here the keyword differ. So meaning it is going to load first everything on our HTML before it is going to execute our index.js. But anyway, we could also do that by listening to our DOM content loaded event. Okay? So meaning that the document object model or everything in our index.html or elements has been loaded. So that is the time that we are going to execute whatever commands that we have here. Okay? So as I've said, we are going to create here our header. I'm just going to create here a method. I'm going to call it draw header. Okay, so we're going to draw here our header. So first that we are going to do is we are going to get the header div. Okay, so we have here. const header div is equal to document dot get element by ID. Then we have header div. Okay. So here we have now the header div as the div from our HTML. Okay, this is not the object that we are going to manipulate. So first I'm going to draw, I'm going to have the h1 header div dot inner HTML is equal to, okay, I'm going to have the h1, then welcome to my world slash h1. Okay, let us try this one first. Okay, so here I'm going to call draw header. Save. So you could see here now our header. Okay, and our header div now contains an h1. Okay, why? It is because we have this one here. Okay, now I'm going to I'm now going um to style my header, my header. Okay, which is actually this one here. Okay, so let us try uh, header div dot style dot color is equal to red. Save. So we have here now red. Okay. So by the way, I just want to clarify that everything that we are going to uh, whatever would be the content of the header div, it is going to have this property here. Okay. For example, I have another it's one here, so it is also going to have the color red. Okay. Then I am going to center. Okay, I'm going to center the content of my header div. So that we are going to have a center. Okay, so I have here text align. Okay, but instead header div dot style dot text align. Okay, so but take note, based on our rule, instead that we are going to use the dash case. Okay, so we're going to use the camel case. Okay, so therefore, instead that I'm going to have here the dash, okay, I'm going to have there text align is equal to, I'm going to have center. Save. Okay, so we have now centered our header. Okay, so that's for our header. Let us say we have, because I have also here, okay, a guest entry CSS or class. Okay, so for those comments or yes, for the comments, so we're going to change the background color to this one here, or whatever you want, then and so on. Okay, so we have here, I'm going to change, okay, I'm going to have it here. So entry div dot style dot, we have here background color is equal to, now I'm just going to follow what I have here. It is EEF. Okay. Save. Okay, so as you can see here, we have now a background color for our uh, comment. Okay, so I'm going to apply padding, margin, bottom, entry div dot style dot adding margin bottom and radius. Then px margin bottom. Okay, so it there. Margin is 5 and 5. Entry div dot style dot px. Save. Okay, so we have here now R. Uh, the style for our comment. So we have the padding, then we have uh, what's that? Border bottom, I think, and the radius. You can see it there. There we have a bit of curve into our corner. Okay, so that's how are we going to apply styles using JavaScript. Okay, so that is without using our separate CSS file. So how about if ever that we are going to have, okay, so we are going to apply a predefined CSS. Okay, so there are two ways. So we have class name and the class list. So what's the difference? Class name replaces all classes with a new class. Okay. While class list, we have the add method. It is going to add or remove one or multiple classes. For example, you have added here a highlight class. So it is going to just add or append the highlight class and it is going to preserve the existing uh, classes. Okay. So we're going to have our header first. So we have here verde and center text. Okay? So verde meaning it is going to change the color to red. So no, 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 green. Okay. So we have here header div dot. I'm going to show you first the class name. Okay? It's equal to verde. Okay? Save. So we have here now the color now is green. Now, what will happen if ever I'm going to use still the class name, but then I'm going to apply center text. So meaning, what I want is, I have here the color green, and I'm going to center header div, still using the class name. Is equal to center dash text. Okay, so here center text. Okay. So what I am expecting here is that the color will be red and it would be centered. Okay, because that's what I want. Using now the class name. Save. It is now centered, but the problem is it is black. Okay? So therefore, what happened here actually is that the first class that we have assigned has been overwritten by the class in our line 41. Okay? So that's the problem with class name. Okay, so be careful when you are going to use class name. How about class list? Okay, so we have header div dot class list dot add. Okay, so we are going to append the class, let us say, verde. Okay, so we're now red. Ano, green, I mean, red. Okay, we have there class is equal to verde. Okay, so next is I'm going to use again header div dot class list dot add then center dash text. Save. So it is still green and centered. Now guys, if we're going to go to our elements here, so we now the class for our div is we have verde and center dash text. Okay, so even though we have here in two different lines, okay, so the verde has been preserved when we have added the class center text. Okay, so but then it is also possible that we could add multiple classes at one time. Okay, so center dash text. Okay, and I'm going to no. Okay, so on line 43, I have added the classes verde and center text. Okay, so save. So as you can see, still we have um, verde and center text. Okay, so that's how are we going to use the class list compared with the class name. So how about here? Instead that I'm going to have 4 lines so that we could apply all of these, since we have now defined it here, guest entry class in our CSS. So I'm just going to call that. Okay, I'm going to have it here. Uh, entry div dot. Actually, in this case, we could use class name. This is because uh, we are using here a single class. Okay, class name is equal to guest entry. Okay, save. Okay, save it there. Hello world and so on. Okay. Okay, so that's how are we going to create styles or apply styles into our elements by using CSS. I know JavaScript, I mean. But for example, by the way, you might say, can we apply styles or classes only to our div? Actually, we could apply it anywhere. For example, here, Instead that I'm going to have the inner HTML, I'm going to create an element. Okay? For example, const um, HDR is equal to document dot create element. Then we're going to have h1. Okay. Then header dot uh, inner text. Okay. I'm going to use here inner text because take note, if this is our h1, so we have here a text in between the h1 and the slash h1, okay, without any formatting. Okay, so there is equal to welcome to my world. By the way, I'm just going to comment this out. Okay. Then after that, header div dot append child. Then we have the header. Okay. But before we're going to add the header, or we are going to append the header into our header div, I'm going to create a style for my header. Header dot, okay, I'm just going to have class list, oops, dot add, then we have verde and center text. Save. So still we have centered and colored green. Okay. Now, if we are going to look at here, the class is now applied to our h1. It is not into our header div. Okay, so therefore, what I'm trying to point out here is that you could use the style property with JavaScript in all elements, not only into our div elements or division elements. Okay, so I have created here an h1, then we have the inner text, added some styles, and by the way, we could still use the style here. Style.color is equal to like that. Okay? Then, before we have appended it into our header div. Okay? Now, just a note. If ever we're going to use inner HTML, it is going to directly display this one here. But in our case, in this one, if ever that we are going to use create element, do not forget to always append it to the parent element. Right? Because if ever I'm not going to have the append child here, as you can see, we don't have our h1. Our header div is still empty. Why? This is because we have only created our header, our h1 element, but we have not appended it into our parent element. Okay, save. So we have there now. Okay, so again, going back, so there are two ways on how are we going to style our created elements. So we have an inline style by using now the style property. And do not forget it should be camel case. And in my case, I usually use the class list. Okay? We are going to apply our predefined CSS classes through the class name and the class list. By the way, we have here remove. Okay? So, if ever that you want to remove, okay, let us say here, I'm going to remove the verde into our header, okay, just so that I just can show you uh, how are we going to use verde or what's that? The remove, I mean, the remove method. Okay, so what I want is that when we're going to add a comment, I'm going to remove. Okay, so here, I'm just going to remove it here. Okay. Remove verde class. Okay. Oh no. Wait. So here I'm going to create draw header. Okay, so since we have now created here our uh, h1 element, and as you can see here, how are we going to make a reference then with our header? As of now, we have no reference. Okay, so we could use the query selector later on, but now in our case, I'm going to show you. I'm going to assign here an ID. Okay, header text. Okay, so that here get element by ID. Then we have header dash text. Okay, I can actually have it directly here, but I'm just going to show you by using a variable. Okay, then header dot class list dot remove. Then we have verde. Save, hit up, submit. As you can see, it is now the verde has been removed. It doesn't make sense, but what I'm doing here is I'm just actually showing you on how are we going to use the remove method. Okay, the remove method for our class list. Okay, so that's how are we going to apply styles into our elements.